This is Friday briefing, and we'll have all the details on all the stories making headlines across the country in this particular 1.5 hour. Remember, our sign language interpreter is Maresha Owiti. You'll forgive me tonight, I have a bit of a cold, but the show must go on. We start with President Uhuru Kenyatta has cancelled his one-week United States of America tour. The cancellation of the trip follows an abortive flight to Dubai, where he was to connect to a commercial flight to Los Angeles, California, for the annual Milken Institute Global Conference. According to State House, the president's Kenya Air Force jet had to turn back because of a routine challenge occasioned by the military conflict in Yemen. But as KTN Samogina reports, security analysts think there is more to the abortive flight than the government is saying.
Sources privy to the president's flight plan now claims that in fact the president's jet was turned back in Eritrea owing to diplomatic differences between the two countries, and that Yemen conflict attributed to by government is a smokescreen to cover up the spat. The sources claim the president's jet, Kenya 1, lacked clearance to fly over the Eritrean airspace, and once airborne, the president's entourage was denied the permission to proceed within its flight path in the Eritrean airspace.
If this was a serious situation as it was, return home, the KDF could break the protocols and call their counterparts, the defense forces of those nations, and say, hey, we're in a distress. They have military bases out there that could receive the head of state.
The Kenya Air Force presidential jet is under the purview of the Air Force wing of the military. Given the security sensitivity of carrying the president, everything is done in a clandestine manner, including the name of the aircraft, the occupants of the aircraft, and its flight path. The president was to connect to a commercial flight in Dubai for the rest of his trip to the United States.
Didn't our friendship extend to the point of, please, we need to land here? Then if our friends there could not help us land our president and avoid this embarrassment, then those are not our friends. In fact, diplomatic questions should be asked. Why didn't you provide clearance for our president?
But taking the government narrative as the true account of the president's travel hitch, then who cleared the president to fly over Yemen, right over a country in the throes of a full-blown military conflict? Since even commercial airlines are rerouting their flights, did someone put the president's security at risk?
Ignorance is never a defense. So we expect to see heads rolling on this one. This is very, very serious. But again, I assure you, nothing will happen.
Consequently, President Uhuru Kenyatta finds himself in an awkward position of having to return to base, cancelling his week-long trip to the United States, where he was to attend the annual Milken Institute Global Conference that brings together world leaders to deliberate on the world's toughest challenges. Samogina, KTN.
Well, that story by KTN Samogina brings us to a big question tonight, and we want to hear your comment on the abortive presidential flight to Dubai. What is your comment on the abortive presidential flight to Dubai? The number remains 22155, but the hashtag on Twitter still remains hashtag Friday Briefing or at Betty Callow, and we'll be sampling your views in this bulletin. Moving on to the counties, angry farmers in Othaya in Nyeri County set ablaze sacks of coffee as a sign of protest over poor pay. The farmers engaged police in running battles for the better part of the afternoon. Today was day 2 of the protest by the farmers at Kagera Coffee Factory.
Coffee trouble brewing. Showdown at the Kagera Coffee Factory in Othaya. Disgruntled coffee farmers saying they would not swallow any more poor prices and what they termed as mismanagement of the factory's operations. Convinced that their voices could not convey the message they intended to pass across, they opted to burn their coffee. And burn they did. Bags after bags of cherries were hauled into the massive fire. But they were not willing to go down without a fight. The drama escalated rapidly and the crowd became frenzied, spoiling for a fight. The presence of police hardly deterred them, and only when the police officers fired in the air did the farmers take off, each for himself.
Na hiyo kawa hata ikichomeka tuko sawa. Tumevumilia ya kutosha. Sijui ni kwa nini hapa Gashadha tu hapa tetu
watu wanajiuzia kahawa. Hakuna vita. Hakuna vita. Hapa udhaya. Kwa nini spirit inaleta shida?
This afternoon's coffee burning incident, the second consecutive one. Just yesterday, the farmers, fewer in number, set ablaze a few bags of coffee. They returned today with a stronger resolve. They had vowed to burn more coffee if their plea was ignored. They kept that promise. They blocked the Othaya Nyeri road, keen on letting the Nyeri County government hear their woes.
Watu wale enemy wetu ni MP, councillor na governor kwa hii kahawa.
Na watu wao wameshikwa waachiliwe ndio tufugue barabara, sababu wasipoachiliwa hatufugui barabara.
Besides poor pay and alleged mismanagement, the other bone of contention is that of where to sell their coffee. The irate farmers claimed they have been at loggerheads with the Othaya Cooperative Society since last year, as they have been denied the right to sell their produce at Thika coffee mills. Instead, they are to take their coffee to Sagana mills as agreed in a pact. The farmers have vowed to cause more mayhem if they are not taken seriously. Carol Derry, KTN, Othaya, Nyeri.
Now, on the day that the government amnesty for youth who have been radicalized by the Al-Shabaab was to end, the Interior Cabinet Secretary has given such youth 14 more days to surrender. Joseph Nkaiseri did not say how many of them have surrendered so far, but indicated they have 2 more weeks to do so. When the first amnesty period of the 10 days was announced, a section of the Muslim leadership requested the government to extend it to 30 days. The government had promised that if radicalized youth surrender, they would be rehabilitated and will not be victimized. The first amnesty offer was made on the 14th of April, 10 days after the Garissa University College terror attack. Moving on to matters corruption, the EACC CEO Halake Wako says investigations of high-profile corruption cases are on course and will be finalized within the 60-day period as directed by the president. But how will they do it without the chairman Mumo Matemu and the deputy Irene Keino? Patrick Amimo has the details.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act 2013 says the commission shall consist of a chairperson and 2 other members. Following the suspension of EACC chairman Mumu Matemu and vice chair Irene Keino and last month's resignation of Jane Onsongo, Integrity Center now lacks a fully constituted commission. The Secretariat has been left to handle operations at the Commission, with concerns raised. Its decisions on corruption cases could be subject to legal challenges. But the Chief Executive Officer says the Commission will fully implement its mandate despite the setback.
The Commission has perpetual succession irrespective of the holders of the office. That's why people come and go.
On Monday, Mumu Matemu suspended Deputy CEO Michael Mobea for 90 days over controversy surrounding the sale and transfer of Integrity Center. Matemu also accused Mobea of hiding 5 files whose cases had been reported to the Commission. The Commission was also planning to discipline the CEO Halake Wako over allegations of insubordination, but postponed the decision since Wako was away on medical leave. But in a strange twist of events, Wako is now calling shots at the Commission after the 2 remaining commissioners were suspended on Thursday.
I know there are others that have been named, but the issue about this building is under very serious investigations. And we're not doing it alone because we are a tenant in the building, therefore we are an interested party. We are partnering with the CID, who is a state agent who is mandated to conduct such light investigations. We are on course, and once we are through, Kenyans will know the truth about the building.
Besides tough wars between commissioners and the Secretariat, both sides have accused one another of serious integrity issues and improprieties. Does the Secretariat retain moral authority to remain in office?
Any mention is usually subjected to investigations. That's why all the Kenyans whose cases are brought here don't end up in court.
Meanwhile, Nairobi Senator Mike Songo was grilled over alleged attempts to influence the 46.6 billion shillings tender at Kenya Pipeline Company in a deal that was to earn him a cool 1.5 billion shillings. Songo has disputed the claim.
Kenya Pipeline deal was awarded to Zakim and not Sinopec. So I don't understand why my name has been dragged into this dossier which was tabled by the president.
He was also questioned over their 930-acre Waitiki farm in Likoni, Mombasa. Sonko defended President Uhuru Kenyatta from any dealings on the purchase of Waitiki land. Suspended Cabinet Secretary for Lands Charity Ngilu told investigators President Kenyatta chaired negotiations where it was agreed Waitiki should be paid 1.1 billion shillings for the land.
The president never played any part on the negotiations between Waitiki and the government.
Suspended Principal Secretary for Defense Mutea Iringo appeared at the commission for the second time to answer to allegations of his appropriating 2.8 billion shillings in confidential expenditure at the office of the president. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Let's go back to Nyeri County. And is that county prepared to accommodate guests numbering almost half its population next month? In May, the world is coming to Nyeri County for the beatification of Catholic nun Sister Irene Stefano, a first event of its kind in Africa. And just under 30 days to the event, the Catholic Church and the security agencies are racing against time to ensure the event is one that will make Kenya shine in the face of the world. As KTN's Carol Nderi now reports from Nyeri, the sainthood sister Irene Stefano is an affair close to the hearts of Nyeri people.
You might have heard about her already, or maybe not. Sister Irene Stephanie Nyatha, whom the locals in Nyeri fondly called Irene, an alteration of her name Irene. She is the reason hundreds of thousands of people will be flocking to Nyeri between 22nd and 24th next month. Arriving from different countries across the globe, they will be in Kenya to witness an event that is the first of its kind in Africa, a beatification, a Catholic practice that is one of the hallmarks of sainthood. Sister Irene Stephanie Nyatha arrived in Kenya in 1915 as a consolata missionary from Italy and lived among the people of Gekondi village in Mokoroine, Nyeri. It is here where she got the name Nyatha, derived from the Kikuyu word tha, to mean mercy or compassion. Her deeds are exalted, far and wide.
During the First World War, she was also involved in helping the soldiers at Asua who were injured.
95-year-old John Mbuthia from Gekondi village is one of the few people still alive who interacted with Sister Irene. Frail he might seem because of his advanced age, but his memory of her is as clear as day. How the Italian sister taught them Latin still mesmerizes him. And the Latin songs she taught them as young, excited children. This is the house that she lived in at the Gekondi Catholic Church. Well, what remains of it? It is one of the attractions that the pilgrims will visit. Last week, the church excavated what remained of the house, and a tap that supplied her with water was discovered alongside this joint piece of wood 85 years later. She passed on in 1930, having lived in Kenya for 15 years. She contracted a disease from one of the sick people she would visit frequently.
And that's how also she became infected with the plague, and she died. So she was not afraid to go and serve him.
This is the cemetery where the Catholic sisters were laid to rest. And this particular grave belonged to Sister Irene Stephanie Nyatha. And once Rome discovered that she had lived an almost saintly life in her 15 years while working in Kenya, the church instructed that her remains be exhumed from this grave and stored at the Madari Central Chapel to avoid further decomposition. Now, it is interesting that some of the belongings that she was buried with were found intact.
Her boots, what the Consolata missionary now refer as the boots of glory, were found intact. To us, that is a miracle, because you can imagine from 1930 to 1995, those are many years, and many things were found intact, like her rosary.
Though her belongings such as her boots and rosary are in Rome, her remains are kept here at the Mathari Central Chapel under lock and key on the instructions of the Vatican. Key officials are involved in a series of meetings to ensure that there will be no hitches at the beatification ceremony. The 3-day event will be held at the Gikondi Catholic Church in Mukurweini and Dedan Kimathi University near Nyeri Town. There will be a final procession from Mathari Mission Complex to Nyeri Town, where Sister Nyada's remains will be taken to Our Lady of Consolata Catholic Cathedral.
We don't desire to go back to our country. Wherever we have grown, blossomed, we die.
While there is a general feeling that Nyeri might not be ready to host the over 300,000 people expected in terms of proper accommodation and security, the county commissioner insists that adequate measures will be put in place.
If it will be a success, then it will mean that the whole county will have actually gained. If it fails, then you see the embarrassment will also come to us as a nation, because we are receiving guests from all over the world.
The construction of the road leading to Mukurweini is ongoing. The county government has appealed to the residents to bid for homestays in the event that the hotels will not be enough. Campsites will also be set up. Carol Derry, KTN, Nyeri County.
We await that beautiful event that will go down our history books. Now, they are increasingly becoming the country's most convenient means of transport, but they have also been deemed the second most likely way to get yourself in an accident. Well, we hit the road to find out why motorcycle transport, commonly referred to as boda boda, has become such a menace.
Nairobi's Mombasa Road is arguably one of the busiest roads in the country. It has, however, caused the death of 77 Kenyans in the last 3 months, and soon enough we see why. Boda boda operators here crossing the highway undeterred by the oncoming traffic. It's a carefree attitude that seems to defy the serious danger on the busy highway. Some even do so with passengers sitting precariously behind them. The same scenes are witnessed along North Airport Road. But it's not just about the dangerous crossing. Traffic rules here do not seem to apply. We spotted many passengers without reflector jackets and helmets. Overloading also appears to be the order of the day, despite the recent ban by police on carrying more than one passenger.
Makasoma wengi sana sana madem husema kimpe kana na town napeleka customer town, mimi lazima nivae reflector na helmet. Mwenyewe ni reflector huwa katai, lakini helmet ukimpea anasema helmet ni chafu. Za zingine timpa helmet yani nywele yake ni special kuliko helmet ya. So always bishana huko job unataka pesa yake.
Motorcycles caused 18% of all road fatalities last year, and in the process became the second most dangerous mode of public transport in the country after public service vehicles. 804. That is the number of Kenyans who have lost their lives as a result of road crashes during the first quarter of 2015, a majority of whom have passed away as a result of motorcycle accidents. Motorcyclists, however, insist that they are not to blame. According to them, when road plans are drawn, their mode of transport is seldom considered.
If in these big roads, highways, they can build roads like Vika Road for boda boda riders, it will be safe and convenient for us.
Boda boda operators insist they abide by the law the best way they can, but blame the police for harassment.
We will not stop, because we want to bring sanity. You carry more than one passenger, you board a motorbike without a helmet, and we are on you, and we are not relenting.
Kama stage yetu, sidhani kama kuna pikipiki yenye haina kila kitu hapa. Tuko na kila kitu, lakini wakikuja utashtukia wamewashika tu. Na akikushika hataki muongee.
60 boda boda passengers and 114 motorcyclists have all lost their lives since the year began, meaning nearly 200 people have died due to boda boda accidents in just 3 months. Between 9 to 15,000 boda boda units are registered per month by the NTSA, totaling to 600,000 new boda bodas yearly. Numbers the authorities say are too high.
We are now starting to think, isn't it maybe the right time
we started reviewing some of these things so that we can slow down the rate at which this sector is growing.
The NTSA has promised tighter regulations for the boda industry, including having 2 helmets and having both the bike and the rider insured against accidents. But even as the rules are being formulated, on the roads it is the lives of ordinary Kenyans that are being gambled with. This even as the operators insist they do their best to remain safe on our roads. Timothy Otieno, KTN.
Interesting piece there. Well, we continue with the narrative of devolution 2 years after the central government shed off some of its resources and power to the 47 county governments. Well, tonight, Fred Muturi brings us the story of Kisii County.
The Kisii County is found within the former Nyanza province. Its capital and largest town is Kisii. Although it has lately become cosmopolitan, the dominant community here is the Gusii. The county has 9 sub-counties with an estimated population of about 1.4 million people. It is a county known for its natural resources like soapstone and a vast arable land. The county's main economic activities include subsistence agriculture, vibrant commerce, dairy farming, tea and coffee growing. For decades, the county has been grappling with poor health facilities, bad roads, and poor waste management systems, congestion within the town, and lack of an adequate infrastructural development. In an ambitious transformation attempt, Governor James Ongwae's administration heavily invested in preventive and curative healthcare in his quest to promote an affordable and accessible healthcare.
When I came in, I realized that we did not have enough medical personnel. So we were able to employ 500 medical personnel. We were also able actually to take over 400 medical personnel who were on contract under the ESP program.
The county upgraded the Kisii Level 5 to a teaching and referral hospital and equipped it. The hospital was established in 1916.
We were also among the first counties to put in place a clear and complete ambulatory system with an ambulance in every ward, in every sub-county. We have 9 sub-counties.
One of the biggest success stories in healthcare in Kisii County is the state-of-the-art CT scan machine at the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital, which has given the facility a complete referral status. The 16-slice CT scanner is used to diagnose and monitor a variety of different health conditions like brain tumors, bone conditions and injuries to internal organs like the heart, liver and the spleen. The scan costs 50% less than what private hospitals are charging.
Nasikia vizuri kwa sababu niliambiwa nimpeleke Eldoret, lakini nasikia vizuri walileta scanning hapa Kisii.
Mashine kama hii ambayo tumewahi kupata hapa kwa siku ya leo, kwa mara nyingine tulikuwa hatuwezi kuipata. Sababu gani? Ilikuwa ziko maeneo ya mbali kama Eldoret, Nairobi na bila na Kisumu. Sisi wananchi wa chini maskini hatungeweza kufikia mashine hii sababu ni transport wise.
This is actually the latest model. So this is a cutting edge CT scanner, state of the art technology inside. So all the software packages to do all the mentioned examinations are inside of this machine.
The county has also a renal unit equipped with 5 dialysis machines that offers subsidized services to the people. The governor has now embarked on equipping health facilities with drugs and staff instead of building new ones.
We realized that the uptake of National Hospital Insurance Fund of the people from Kisii County was very low. The last statistics actually indicated that there were only about 80,000 that had taken up NHIF out of a population, I'm telling you, about 1.4 million.
The county government set aside 40 million shillings in the program that has dropped 800 people per ward.
Ambulance siko siku hizi, mgonjwa akikuwa kama ni mbali kama ile interior kabisa, mtu anakimbia na bigibigi anaita hiyo ambulance na weka mgonjwa anapeleka hospitali.
Alilete shule trainings pia, hiyo ni mazuri.
at least kuna mazuri yenye amefanya kwa county.
The county is also setting up a medical diagnostic unit having machines like the mammography and magnetic resonance imaging. The Kisii residents also say they thank devolution for the focus that their roads infrastructure is getting.
Barabara hii inatengenezwa chorochoro, inatengenezwa kama unapata basikiri, ukipata pikipiki inasukuma ya sokoni.
Tukiangalia upande wa transportation, at least siku hizi mazao sio mbaya sana kuchukua kwa shuko. Kwa hivyo tumeona kama tulikuwa tunalipa 200 lakini nowadays tunalipa 250.
Being a very fertile region in agriculture, the residents have for years produced many varieties of food which they struggle to sell. The county established an avocado processing plant where it has so far exported 50 metric tons of cosmetic oil to Mexico. The Kisii markets have been witnessing vibrant trade activities during the day, and now the integrated street lighting program launched in Kisii town and all sub-county headquarters is promoting a 24-hour economy.
Kama sisi wa mama tunakuanga waoga wakati wa giza, lakini sasa hivi tuliwekewa lights hatuogopi kabisa. Hata saa ngine tunauza mpaka karibu tunafika saa 6 ya usiku tukiwa kwa soko.
The challenge now is to decongest Kisii town, training and rerouting of border operators to manage their movement in town and managing solid waste. The county has also a challenge of intensive land subdivision for inheritance purposes. This has reduced land sizes to uneconomical portions, leading to declining food production, and currently the county's poverty index stands at 51%. An analysis of the status of land done early this year indicated that 77 prime plots have been irregularly acquired, and this has seriously affected land's urban development and physical planning. Fred Muturi, KTN, Kisii.
Right, from Kisii, we want to take a short commercial break to pay the bills, but let's have a reminder of our big question tonight, and we are asking you, what's your comment on the abortive presidential flight to Dubai? What's your comment on the abortive presidential flight to Dubai? A lot of your comments coming in. Let me just sample one or two. It's Joe Koech on Twitter says, that's a total embarrassment to our sovereignty. Turning away a head of state is an act of impunity. Paul Mwani says the presidential advisors must be suspended, questioned by CID. The AG, the CS should also take full responsibility. Thank you very much, and of course we'll continue sampling those particular views as we move along in the bulletin. But before we take that break, I want to bring your attention to something that is so dear to us here on Friday Briefing. Last week we had the lovely boy Luca Berardi, 11 years old, actor, singer, CEO. You remember him, I'm sure. So this is a picture that he sent to me. It's a picture of him and Dr. Chris Kirubi. Last week during the show, Dr. Chris Kirubi said that he wanted to meet Luca because he thought that Luca was quite brilliant. And so there you go, Luca in Dr. Chris Kirubi's office, just taking a look at some paperwork. He had quite a lot of fun there. I also do understand that Luca will from now on be working at Capital FM during his holidays as something. I'm sure we'll get to hear his voice soon. Where there we go. A very, very big congratulations to Luca on his new job. But we now take that short commercial break. We'll be back with the lovely Cynthia and Nyamai. Stay with us.
I'm told when training to become a hairdresser, one must practice at least 1,000 times on a mannequin such as this one before they're allowed to touch a client's head. Well, that might sound crazy, but professionalism is what has turned this industry into a multi-billion shilling industry. Cynthia Nyamai, KTN, Saturday night.
So Cynthia is laughing because she can't believe that we actually found a video of her reporting. But let me just do a very quick profile of who Cynthia is for those who do not know. Well, she is a former KTN business anchor and reporter. There she was reporting. She also won the Diageo Business award for the best upcoming reporter in Africa at that time. That's a big deal in the business world. She's also a writer for Forbes magazine, and she's also, quite impressively, the managing director of Cynthia Nyamai Communications. So she has done quite a lot. I can't say she's very young. I was saying at a tender age, but I'm not sure about her age. So let me not go there. Cynthia, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, just looking at that video, do you miss reporting and all these things?
I miss reporting. I miss interacting, meeting people. And I remember that story. I actually did a story. I met this young lady who had a salon, and I was very impressed that she had decided to take it to the next level. I think at that time most of the celebrities used to go to Raquel's, and they still do salon. And that's the kind of story I used to do. I used to go out, find business people, entrepreneurs, hustlers.
Hustlers.
And do stories because they really used to inspire me. And then a few years later, I decided to join them.
So before we go to a few years later, you mentioned something to do with the next level. And I just want us to run another clip of Cynthia taking reporting to the next level. Just let's run that video.
Well, that's a critical question that a lot of entrepreneurs must ask themselves before they start up their business. Some decide to go along with their training. Others, like Agnes, go along with their passion or their hobby. And just like her, you may find yourself laughing, or should I say, in this case, sewing all the way to the bank. Cynthia Nyamai, KTN, Saturday Night Live.
I could have actually, if I didn't know who you are, I would have thought that that's actually your day job.
Actually, the lady behind me is Big Ted's mother. And I went to her shop, and again, she has, for me, I used to work with people who take small businesses and take it to the next level, value addition. And she does a lot when it comes to African print. And a lot of her clothes are so beautiful. And she sort of like promoted at those times, and even now, for young people like us to wear vitenges and have them in a modern design.
Nice way. All right, so looking at the stories that you are doing, stories that, you know, are so personal, do you miss telling those stories? Like, you know, like you said earlier, you miss that, you know, one-on-one with people. Is it something that would make you come back to this industry?
I think it probably would be, because of my traveling a lot, it would probably be difficult for me to come back. But I still write once in a while. One time I went to Forbes. I called Forbes. I said, I'd like to come to your office. I went to the office. I said, I want to complain. I've only seen one Kenyan on the cover of Forbes magazine. I want to see more Kenyans. And if you want, I can write. I'll do it for free. So they said, okay, fine, write. So I remember I wrote my first story. They told me try and get for us Merali. Merali rarely does interviews, rarely talks about even how much he's worth. And for Forbes, you have to tell us how much you're worth. So I went, I convinced him, and I told him the reason why I'm writing is because I want to inspire Kenyans. I want people to know that Merali, when he started, he had nothing. He worked very hard, and so anyone in Kenya can make it. The opportunities are there. And until today, I still write. I had a story actually 2 weeks ago in the Nation newspaper, and I was telling Kenyans that, you know what, don't just start your business in your estate. Think about Kenya, think about Uganda, Tanzania, think about Nigeria. And I was talking about it because when we saw the president come to to Kenya, he came with 500 government officials and businessmen because they could see the opportunities in Kenya. And yet Kenyans, a lot of Kenyans just want to sit in their small corner and run their businesses here while we have Africa. Nigeria has a big population, bigger than the whole of East Africa. So that's an opportunity that people can look at. You can go to Uganda, Tanzania. It's certainly a bit easier to do business there. We're a lot alike. We all speak Swahili. So I was encouraging, and that's the kind of stories I do, letting people get inspired and see the opportunities out there.
So I want to take you a few years back, because when you left KTN, so many people were left wondering, why is she leaving? At what point did you decide that you want to leave and you want to take on Cynthia Nyamai Communications?
I think for me, I was very clear. I remember when I was doing my interview here at KTN, and they asked me, what would you like to do? And I even wrote it and I said, read my objective in the CV. I want to be the best reporter in Africa. And then when I won the Diageo Award as the best upcoming business reporter in Africa, I knew, yes, I've made it. Now it's time for me to take up the next level. I needed growth. So I decided to take the risk and start my own business.
All right, so in different circles, talking about the business that you started, in different circles you're known as the fixer, part of which is as a result of you being part of the team that led to Muhammadu Buhari's win. How did you even start? How did you get to that point where you became part of this team? And it's not in Kenya, it's not even, it's not Tanzania or, Uganda. It's actually, Nigeria. At what point and how did you get into to get that opportunity?
Really interesting. For me, my vision and purpose, the reason why God brought me into this earth is to bring Africa together. And I always talk about it, bringing Africa together through trade. So I opened up in Nigeria, and then I came to Kenya and I met with the Nigerian High Commissioner, and I told him, you know what, I really want to see more trade between Kenya and Nigeria, because I think we're almost like the big brothers of Africa, Kenya and Nigeria. Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa, and I must say that Kenya is developed in Africa. So I said, let me work for you, and he told me at the moment we don't actually have a budget. I said, it's okay, let me do it for free. All I want to see is Kenya and the two countries trade. So he told me, okay, fine, we have some investors coming in, why don't you arrange their meetings? And I did that, and one of the people who I met then was a governor in Nigeria. And what I didn't realize actually is in Nigeria, governors are quite powerful. They're actually the most powerful politicians in Africa. And so, and later on he said, why don't you also work for us? So I went, I started working for them, and then I started doing work with APC. And then we went through the primaries last year in Lagos to choose our presidential candidate. Buhari won. We're very excited. In fact, a lot of people within the party said, we don't even need to go through the primaries. Let's just give this to Buhari. He said, no, let's be democratic. So we're in Lagos, we went through that process, and then after that we had the elections. And the thing I like about Nigeria is there's never one moment where people tell me, hang on, you're Kenyan, what are you doing here? Why are you working? Yes, that's the thing I love about them. They have never asked me, where are you coming from? For them, Africa is one, and I have the same belief. I believe Africa is one, no boundaries, no borders. The borders that we have were just put in by the colonialists, and we need to tear them down and just be one. I don't see why I need a visa to go to South Africa or Nigeria, because we're all one. And that's one thing I love about Nigeria. I've worked there for 3 years. I have a contract. I'll be there for another 5 years.
Really?
Yes.
Someone might say, why isn't she doing all these wonderful things in Kenya? Why choose to go to Nigeria? Kenya has the same equal opportunities.
I still have my office here in Nigeria.
In Kenya.
I mean, sorry.
I just came in this morning
from Nigeria.
From Nigeria, and I've been there for the last 1 year. But I also still have my office here in Kenya. Don't forget, also in the last election, I also did work for TNA. And then also after this, I'm also going to Tanzania. I'll be working with a presidential, let me say the next president of Tanzania, January Makamba. And so this is work that I'm doing throughout Africa, and trying to work in different countries, trying to change leadership in Africa. I can see very good leaders coming up in Africa. Leaders who believe in transparency. I have to say Buhari believes in transparency. We're going to see changes. We'll see changes. And even here in Kenya, the president, I'm very proud to have worked for Uhuru's team, and he's definitely going to change Kenya. And you
You're
can
going
see
so political now.
You can see
You're
a
politics
pattern.
now.
And even in Tanzania, and there's one thing that's happening in Africa. There's a revolution happening in Africa. A lot of people said you cannot get out a sitting president in Nigeria, but we saw Nigerians break that myth. And so we're hoping to see that throughout Africa, that even here in Kenya, if our leaders don't perform come the next election, a a lot of them will go home. That is something certainly that we're going to see throughout Africa.
Cynthia, maybe finally before, I mean, right now there's so many young women who are looking at you and they're just wondering, okay, she looks very polished, you know, speaks very well, has all these opportunities. I mean, was it a case of everything was given to you? I mean, what advice can you give to young women and even young men who are looking up to you and they want to conquer some of the opportunities that you've also been able to?
I have to say that all the generation that we have right now is lucky and blessed to be born in Africa at this time. This is a time for Africa. The opportunities are there. If you look throughout the world, everyone wants to come do business in Kenya. So the opportunities are there. It's really up to you. And I tell people, if you're in Africa and you die anything less of a millionaire, it's your fault. Blame yourself because the opportunities are there. And if you're coming from a country like Kenya, our education is very good. The opportunities are there. And I always tell people, find out your purpose, why you're brought into this earth, and then go for it.
Go for it. Yes. I like that. Well, we'll continue this conversation in a short while. But for now, I want you to do what you used to do. And please don't take my job. So if you can join me here,
I'll be happy to do that.
Just
take your job.
Please, no. I think you're doing so well for yourself. But then the other question is, a few months ago, have a seat there.
Thank you.
Let me grill you some more. A few months ago, Valentine's Day, we got to hear about this 2.4 million room in Kempinski, and your name came up as one of the people who had actually booked for that room for your loved one. 2.4 million shillings. I mean, money ain't a thing to you, Cynthia.
Not really. I think the thing that I like is when you're in the thing I like about running your own business is you're sort of independent, and you have the freedom. That's what I like. You have the freedom,
financial freedom, you mean?
Yes, to do what you like. And I really enjoy spending on my loved ones, my family, my niece, and I really enjoy giving back. So that's
you giving back to your loved one. So is he Kenyan or is he Nigerian?
As I said, for me, there are no boundaries. Africa is one, so he's from Africa.
That definitely makes it. So that's obviously he's not Kenyan. Sorry to our Kenyan listeners. We'll be talking to her about that. But so there we go. So this is it.
Yes.
You've done this, but then let us see if you still can do it.
Well, this is an interesting story that I've been watching for the last couple of weeks, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is once more embroiled in a debacle with its top officials at the heart, while Chair Mumo Matemu and his deputy Irene Kano are currently in the thrones. But this scene has played out before with the anti-corruption heads. As KTN Edith Kimani now reports, the current situation is a cut and paste scene from the 1998.
At the helm of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission sit Chairman Mumo Matemu and Deputy Irene Kano, whose heads currently lay in a proverbial guillotine. But history shows that they're not the first. History also reveals that not a single head in the history of Kenya's anti-corruption bodies has served to full term. This is the place where heads just keep rolling. And ex-policeman and politician Haron Mwau got the first taste of this. At the time of his appointment as a director of the now-defunct Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority in 1997, pressure was on for Kenya to fight corruption. The International Monetary Fund had threatened to suspend loans to Kenya, and fighting graft was one way to keep the money coming. Mwau was in charge of the first graft-fighting body, and by most accounts on the right track until he hit a raw nerve. The CASA director decided to go after Treasury and Tax Department officials over graft. What followed shocked the country.
Who gave you authority to write these things to me?
The Attorney General would take over the case, terminate it, and a few days later, Mwau would be suspended from office and a tribunal formed to look into the, quote, proper performance of the functions of the director of CASA. Patrick Lumumba himself, a former head of the Anti-Corruption Commission, says it was bound to happen.
When you begin to discharge the mandate which is assigned to you in accordance with the law, the lords of impunity, the children of darkness, gang up and they remove you. And the tragedy is that the Kenyan population is never outraged.
2 years after its formation, CASA would get a new director in Aaron Ringera, who moved with lightning speed. In fact, Ringera worked so fast that between 1999 and 2000, CASA had investigated a reported 135 cases. His stand against corruption was bullish, but as the highest paid civil servant threatening the big fish of corruption, Ringera saw himself as a walking target.
Director liveth between the hammer of his friends and the anvil of his opponents.
In the end, Parliament would kick him out of office, terming his appointment illegal.
Think none harm, do none harm, wish none harm. We only attack corruption and...
Patrick Lumumba was next, and just a year into his tenure, he was facing the axe. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission was coming into effect as envisioned by the Constitution, and the big talker had to step aside. At the time of his exit, CAS had launched a probe into the management of the constituency development funds and opened graft cases against then Water Minister Charity Ngilu, former Industrialization Minister Henry Koskei, former Education Minister Sam Ongeri, and former Runyenjes MP Cecily Mbarire. The fate of Matemu and Keino now rests with a tribunal looking into allegations against them. Should they survive the tribunal, then they will make history. But if they don't, it will simply be a case of history repeating itself. Edith Kimani, KTN.
Thanks, Edith. Well, after reading the intro, I don't think you're taking my job anytime soon.
Now people are commenting and saying I have a Nigerian accent. It looks like I can't take this job now.
You cannot take my job.
It's gone now.
2 out of 10. 2 out of 10 for the effort, for appearing.
Haba. You know, in Nigeria they like saying haba.
Haba.
Haba. I've lost this job now.
All right, so tweet us and tell us how you think Cynthia fared. And I see you have something there.
I have something for you. It's made out of Ankara.
You just want to take us to Nigeria. Oh, this is beautiful.
A piece of Nigeria just for you.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much.
Lovely neck piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It can't go with my outfit today, but I'm
tomorrow.
sure I'll wear it tomorrow.
Or next week. I'll be watching.
All right. All right, so where do we go to next?
After this, we're catching up with business news. I'm handing you over to the next studio where we'll find out what happened in the business world today.
Well, many thanks there, Cynthia. And just before I let you go, what do you think about business reporting generally in Kenya and perhaps in the region?
I have to say business reporting, and one thing I like about business reporters, I know a lot of them have to study business, and a lot of them take accuracy very seriously. So I'm very, very proud to be associated with the business reporters that we have in Kenya, including you.
Glad to know that you really did set the standards well. A warm welcome here on KTN Business. My name is Abi Agina. Buying and selling of securities and shares is said to become a lot more easier in coming days as the trading infrastructure and technology continues to advance. Traditionally, participation in the securities market in Africa has been limited by lack of a well-integrated technology platform. And now, Kenya and Nigeria are among the first countries that will benefit from top-notch trading technology in a year's time as AfriClear, a new investor, opens shop in both countries to set up advanced trading infrastructure. KTN's Charles Gitonga breaks this down for us.
Africa's securities market has been reeling under the miasma of undertrading with other regions for a while now. Evidence of this is the low number of security exchanges in the continent. There are 29 securities exchanges in Africa that represent capital markets in 38 nations. While Africa has 55 countries, the number of established exchanges is still low, and the key challenge has been lack of sufficient trading infrastructure.
The depositories in Africa are at very different levels. Some are very advanced, and some are, in the very early infancy stages. And so, but the common questions or problems that they have are the same.
For instance, a shareholder at the Nairobi Securities Exchange whose shares are in shilling value and would like to buy shares at the Nigerian Stock Exchange in Lagos will have to convert shillings into dollars, then into naira before buying. It is for such insufficiencies that the Central Depository and Settlement Corporation in Kenya and the Nigerian Central Securities Clearing System, supported by Altri Financial Group, merged to form AfriClear Limited, which will avail integrated and technologically advanced trading infrastructure to the markets in the continent. The company will install independent trading infrastructure and enable the central security depositories from across Africa tap in with the hope to expand their services and grow profitability.
Yes, we want to have big and very, very state-of-the-art markets. We can't afford that technology.
If you look at the entire continent and look at some of our infrastructure challenges, for example, telephones, right? If we were to do this for telcos and just put our pride of wrapping ourselves with our national flags, we would have gone very far by now. But the initial investments are where the challenges lie.
The setup costs are pegged at around $3 million. AfriClear has partnered with the African Development Bank, who are expected to be a long-term financial partner. For the initial investment, the bank is giving 37 million shillings to get AfriClear off the ground in Kenya and Nigeria.
AFDB are actually buying shares in AfriClear, and for that investment they are getting 10.6% shareholding and a seat on the board. Other development partners may want different structures. We'll have that discussion with them and see how we are able to structure it.
With funding well in place, AfriClear will sign up all the central depositories in Africa in the next 3 months, with expectations that systems will be up and running in 9 months. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
Interesting developments there. We do hope that they will soon be getting down to work. Moving on, the growing number of cases of attacks at gunpoint being mooted on private motorists is slowly becoming a source of worry. Gangs of youthful men have been captured in broad daylight on CCTV cameras, robbing unsuspecting citizens. With little attention or no response by relevant security agencies, a duo of young entrepreneurs are providing stopgap measures to the menace. Take a look. The allure of city dwellers driving and going about their business in the capital is slowly taking on a new shape. Incidents of crime are dampening the attractiveness for not only city dwellers but investors as well. Statistics from the 2014 National Police Service Annual Crime Report shows that Nairobi was leading with 6,732 cases, reported incidents of crime, followed by Nakuru with 4,525 cases. The new mode of executing crime has been through the use of motorbikes, where armed robbers target motorists and steal from them. These trends have given rise to hitmen taking on individuals as well, the latest being the brutal murder of Kabete Member of Parliament George Mushai. And in a move to provide innovative solutions, I caught up with two gentlemen who are making inroads in their kind of business. Meet Njehia Njoroge and Peter Kenywa, the proprietors of EPG Limited. The firm, which specializes in security services, are capitalizing on the opportunity presented by the sorry state of security.
Years that has been put can now withstand this ordinary glass, which is about 10mm glass.
They are in the business of insulating cars with bullet-resistant fittings. They say business is fast picking up with clients keen on their product.
So far we have seen very good response. People are excited.
The business, which has been in operations for less than 2 years, is a testament of the worrying crime levels, especially among high-net-worth individuals. To fit a car with bullet-resistant fittings, it costs about 30,000 to 50,000 shillings on average, depending on the car.
In the market today, you can't just believe something just because you have been told it does what it does. 8 layers.
I was rather curious of the certainty as to whether this concept really works or is just a floss. Our crew set out to a shooting range to establish whether this venture actually works. Well, we've just arrived at one of the shooting ranges and we want to see what really happens when it comes to the resistance of these particular glasses. Well, in a few, do join me as I take you through what really happens. On arrival, the team quickly sets up the samples they have insulated for live shooting. 2 of the samples have varied layers, while one has no insulation at all. I check and ascertain that the marksman is indeed using live bullets.
definitely the bullet won't go through, and that gives you time to take cover. But if you're very sure about your cover, you can still fire back.
The exercise takes just about 20 minutes.
Trends of insecurity, I foresee it as a great investment in terms of security, because I mean it's a protection for yourself and your dear ones, your clients, the general public.
Although this is not an assurance of one's safety, but according to Njehia, he says it's a better option than having none at all. While this is one of the interventions from the private sector, motorists can only but hope that security will be stepped up moving forward.
Indeed, innovations trying to solve crime. The ICT Authority and Microsoft have entered into a partnership which will, among other things, see Microsoft offer support in training for up to 300,000 teachers. The partnership will also ensure provision of reliable, accessible and affordable devices and broadband to create an enabling environment for the development of ICT skills. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Ministry of ICT Principal Secretary Joseph Chimpati noted that the partnership will help Kenya achieve the National ICT Master Plan dubbed Connected Kenya 2017. The plan seeks to spur the development of 500 Tier 1 technology companies, creation of 20 global innovations and 50,000 new jobs.
And the few that are lack the necessary devices to transfer their skills to students.
This, we believe, will help in terms of capacity building and will help in terms of workforce development.
Well, at Safaricom, Steve Chege is the new Director of Corporate Affairs at mobile telecommunications firm Safaricom. Chege takes over from Zioka Waita, who left the telco a week ago after he was appointed Secretary of Delivery in the Office of the President. Chege has been Safaricom's Head of Regulatory and Public Policy, a position that he has held for the past 3 years. He was mainly in charge of managing Safaricom's engagement with stakeholders, regulators and government on licensing, compliance, spectrum, numbering, interconnection and policy issues. Safaricom CEO Bob Colimo also promoted Miriam and Koi Kinyanjui to head the Corporate Communications Department. Ms. Kinyanjui was previously a manager in the same department, having joined Safaricom 6 months ago from IT giant IBM. Well, and that brings us to the end of business news for this week. I'll be handing over next week to Joy Doreen Bira. Well, do have a lovely evening. Coming up next is Mind Your Language. My name is Abi Agina. Have a blessed weekend.
Well, it's time to cross over to Kisumu County, where the man, the genius in pronunciations, Willis the Word Master, also known as Willis Ocheng, is on standby. Willis, it's great to see you this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Betty. It's great for me also to see you looking cool and tough as usual.
Exactly. Couldn't have been said better. Willis, let's begin with our word on the street.
Exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Exhaustion. Exhaustion.
Exhaustion.
Extortion. Extortion.
Right, Willis, you've heard there, funny Kenyans trying to pronounce that difficult word. Is it exhaustion, exhaustion, exhaustion? Which is which, Willis?
Betty, this is a very tricky word. We say exhaust, exhaust. But then when we come to this word, we say exhaustion, exhaustion. Not all that I've heard about exhaustion. Just like we talk of combustion, not combustion and all that. Combustion, exhaustion.
All right, got it, Willis. Let's move on to the second word. We have a period of 10 years. Is it a decade or a decade?
That one has two acceptable pronunciations in standard English. We can say decade, decade. We can also say decade. So decade, decade, both are acceptable.
Ah, got it. So decade is also acceptable.
Acceptable.
Wow, okay, great. Moving on to the third word. Do we say my preference or my preference?
We say preference. The verb is prefer, but we don't say preference the way it is commonly said locally. We say preference, just like refer, reference or reference. Prefer, preference or preference.
Got it, Willis, got it. Moving on to another difficult word. This one especially, this one gives me problems. An expert in matters of taste, you know, like tasting wine. That word, connoisseur, let me not embarrass myself, Willis. How do we pronounce that one?
That is a word which is borrowed from French. And in English, we say connoisseur. Connoisseur.
Okay. All right, got it. Connoisseur. I wouldn't have guessed it, Willis. Connoisseur. Okay, great.
I know.
Willis, let's move on to another word. It's a very common word, but two very different pronunciations. Do we say children or children? My children go to this school, or is it my children go to this school?
Betty, to be honest with you, I sometimes find myself a bit confused when I hear people talking of children or children. I don't know where they get that sound. The word is child, but the plural form is children. Children, not children, not children, Betty.
All right. Another basic one is, do you say secondary education, secondary school, or is it secondary?
Secondary, secondary, secondary education, secondary education.
Wow, okay, so that's a surprise. Secondary, not even secondary.
I know.
Secondary, you say?
Yes, secondary education.
All right, secondary. I like that one. Moving on to another word. Do we say depot or depot? You know, when you mean like, you know, like a depot of you know, soft drinks or something. Is it a depot or a depot?
You are talking about D-E-P-O-T?
Yes.
We say depot, depot. A beer depot, not depot, not depot, not depot. It's depot.
Depot. All right, Willis, got it.
Yes.
Well, moving on to another word that is most times used by journalists. Do we say verbatim, verbatim? How do we pronounce that word?
I know the very common mispronunciation locally is verbatim. Verbatim.
Yes.
To quote somebody verbatim, that is not the case. We say verbatim. Verbatim. Verbatim.
Okay.
So we have the primary stress on the second syllable, and then we say a or a. Betim or betim. Verbatim.
Verbatim. Got it, Willis. All right, let's move on to our feedback questions, and I have two. Last week, our guest anchor, the little 11-year-old Luca Berardi, asked me to ask you, do we say biscuits, biscuits, you know? He says that, you know, that one gives him a difficult time. How do you pronounce that one?
Betty, we say biscuits. Biscuits.
Biscuits.
Not biscuits, not biscuits. We say biscuits.
Okay.
And we also say mosquito, not mosquito.
Okay.
Masquerade, not masquerade. So we have to get some of these words or some of these pronunciations right.
Okay, Willis, got it. I'm sure Luca is happy with that. Let's move on to the Bible. And some members of my church were asking, do we say Elisha or Elijah? Are those the correct pronunciations?
Well, many people get confused when it comes to pronouncing some of the English names. Like what we see is Elisha. Some will say Elijah, but the correct pronunciation of that name is Elisha. Elisha. Just like Elijah. Elijah in English. We don't say Elijah. And Betty, you reminded me about one John Courier who also asked me whether we say Zacchaeus, 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 and all that for Zacchaeus. Anyway, we say Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus. Okay, we got it, Willis.
Yes.
Moving on to our surprise
Tricky
word.
names.
Okay, all right, got it. Moving on to our surprise word. Which one is it tonight, Willis?
Betty, this one will catch very many people unawares and maybe with a real surprise. We've had many people talking of meteorological department when we are talking matters weather, which is in fact confusing. When we talk of meteorological, that is a word that is derived from meteorology. That is the scientific study of measurement. It has nothing to do with weather forecasts. When we're talking of matters weather, we have meteorology. Meteorology. So the department is meteorological department. Meteorological, not meteorological.
Wow, that's a tongue twister.
There you are.
Meteorological.
There you are.
I have to say it slow, Willis. Meteorological department.
Yes.
Got it.
I know.
Willis, always a pleasure having you on the show, of course, teaching us those difficult pronunciations. Willis, the word master, thank you so much.
An action-packed and sporty day. It has been a very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Starting us off, today we start on a winning spree for the Kenyan Queens of Volleyball, where the national women's volleyball team has qualified for the All-African Games. And that's after registering their third victory at the African Zone 5 qualifiers in Kampala, Uganda. The national oil sponsored African Queens made easy work of the Burundi in a match that lasted slightly over 30 minutes. The Burundians, who are making inroads into the African women's volleyball, had a rough day as they attempted in vain to avoid the bullet-like spikes by the Kenyan Queens. The opening set ended 25-11, the second 25-13, and the third 25-10. Moving on. An impressive Green Sharks toy Impala with a 5-1 scoreline in the third day of the Vaisaki hockey tournament. After suffering defeat in the opening match against the Ghana Revenue Authority, Sharks were determined to walk away with maximum points from today's tie, and they were able to sound the boards fast. Sharks continued to display their prowess into the match and ended 5-1 to their advantage. Earlier on, Kenyan police were awarded 3 important points without having to hit the ball after their opponents Uganda Simba failed to honor that fixture. The matches that were affected yesterday by the heavy downpour have been rescheduled and they will be played on Saturday morning. The Kenyan Paralympics swimming team has promised to better their performance during this year's International Blind Sports Association World Games to be held in Korea. The team, which is camping at the Kasarani Aquatic Center, is looking forward to place Kenya into the Olympic map where they wanted to sparkle and better their performance. Robinson Okenye has that report.
Kenya was represented for the first time by a Paralympic swimming team at the 2010 Commonwealth Games in Delhi, India, where 3 swimmers took part. A year later, the team took part in the All-Africa Games in Maputo, Mozambique, where they were overshadowed by experienced opponents. In 2014, due to classification issues, 1 Paralympic swimmer represented the country in the Commonwealth Games. Despite the Achillean challenges the Paralympian swimmers have faced since the inception of the team has high hopes of a podium finish in the International Blind Sports Federation World Games next month.
Effort for our Kenyan swimmers to be able to reach at the peak, at the top, with other international countries which have been actually performing well in swimming.
We have to be positive. Yes, we have what it takes, but we also need to improve ourselves.
With the Olympics and All Africa Games fast approaching, the Paralympians have their sights set on putting Kenya on the Paralympic swimming map.
We participate in the Rio, Brazil Olympics and to win. and also all African games, and in the forthcoming competitions like the Commonwealth, etc.
Kwangu ni courage tu peke yake na kujiamini tutaweza kushinda.
The International Blind Sports Federation World Games begin on May 10th in Seoul, Korea. With Kenya having failed to sparkle in Paralympic swimming in recent years, this year the swimmers are optimistic of bringing home glory. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
And with that, we wind up our today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Have a lovely night.
Well, we're just about to wind things up here on KTN Friday Briefing. Thank you very much for all your feedback. But of course, let's have a reminder and a review of our big question tonight. And we had asked you, what was your comment on the abortive flight that took place today in regards to President Uhuru Kenyatta's trip to Dubai? Well, let me read some of your comments. The military air operation in Yemen has been going on for quite some time, and it has been on the news. The Kenya Air Force should have known better. The Kenya Air Force commander should resign or be sacked for negligence. That's David Ruto in Nairobi. One other message here: the president should not forgive anybody for this particular mishap, period. It's wrong 3 times. One more message here. I think there are people misadvising the president in all aspects: security, politics, and also on terror. Somebody must be held responsible. That's Karobia from Meru. Thank you very much for all your feedback and indeed for watching KTN Friday Briefing. My name is Betty Kialo. See you again next week, God willing. Have a lovely weekend.